So we got to see how the Jewish community prays. And then we walked into the church, and the priest now started reading from the Bible. And next to me was one of those imams who used to lead a big masjid in Algeria. 10,000 people used to pray behind him. And when the priest began to recite and read some of these verses, he leaned towards me and he said, "This is exactly what our book says. You know, about hikmah, wisdom, and taqwa, and piety, and righteousness. Take the issue of theology aside. But there are a lot of inherent issues that we agree on." And then he said something that was profound. He said, "I have never in my life engaged with a Christian religion." Right? And I think that's a disaster, because if you're an Islamic scholar and you want to convey your message to others, but you have already put a barrier between you and others, you're not even trained to deal with others in terms of dialogue. And that is a tragedy in modern Islam. But in the past, there was an exposure to different communities, and that's why in the early 8th century, the Khulafa al-Ma'mun established Bayt al-Hikmah, for instance, and he brought Christians and Jews and Muslims and Zoroastrians, and this tradition continued for a long time. Even in Spain, you see that the three communities helped establish a wonderful civilization which pushed Europe forward by at least 500 years, according to some historians of science. Goldstein is one of those historians of science who said the Islamic Spain pushed Europe 500 years forward. And then he said, had Muslims remained in Spain, and one of the features of Spain was that coexistence between Christians, Muslims, and Jews. And look, after all, if you are solid in your faith and in your grounding of faith, why should you be fighting in dialogue, having a dialogue with somebody else? But only you will be frightened if you have a dialogue with somebody else when you yourself are not sure about your own yourself. And so, Goldstein said, had Islam remained in Spain, then man would have landed on the moon 200 years earlier than what he did. Possibly, because the advancement in science and technology was profound in Spain, and it was known as the flower of Europe and so on. Anyhow. So many organizations were formed: Islamic Federation of Islamic Councils, but also we formed another council called Australian National Imams Council. Now for the first time, brought all the Imams of Australia together, or the majority of them, under one umbrella to discuss issues that relate to Islam and the Muslims, and to do research on matters that relate to Islam and the Muslims. And more importantly, to be able to issue fatwas that are consistent with the context of Australia, and not to rely on fatwa from somebody outside who doesn't know what's happening in Australia. And that's very important when it comes to asking fatwa. إنما الفتوى على حسب السؤال. It is said that fatwa is according to the question. So if you speak to a mufti outside of Australia who doesn't know the context, then he may give you an answer based on what you have told him. I'll give you one example. In the Middle East now they have live fatwa on TV, in some of these channels. So the sheikh will be sitting there, people will call him, and they'll say, la la la, and the sheikh will give a fatwa. So one man called from Sydney, and I happened to be watching that program. He says, "Sheikh, in Australia we have big families, it's very hard to rent, and we can't buy a house, we don't have halal Islamic banking, so am I allowed to go and get a mortgage from a conventional bank based on riba?" And because of the way he put forward the question, it sounded like, wow, we're living in misery in Australia, you're poor man. And so the sheikh said, yeah, you can do that, because this is darura, this is a necessity. Straight after that, another man from Sydney called Sheikh, but the other man didn't tell you that if we are unemployed, there is a welfare system where the government gives us wages and salary, and they help us pay the rent, and also education is free, and medication is for free. The sheikh said, is there a country in the world that actually does these things? And he said, yes, Australia. He says, well, no, you can't go and get a house from the conventional man, right? So it's important Australian Muslims recognize, realize, in order to solve their problems, they have to contextualize Islam and rely on their own expertise of it. There is no harm, of course, in consulting more learned scholars from outside and so on. But also another fundamental change that came within the Islamic community is involving the systems, involving women. So for a very long time, Islamic organizations, masajid, mosques, and so on, sort of neglected that very important part of the society, and that is women. And because of cultural barriers more than anything else, because we know Aisha and Khadija, the wives of the Prophet, and many others were leaders in this field. One of the scholarships that we provide through the GRIFFITH Islamic Research is called Karima al-Mirzawiya PhD Scholarship. Karima was an 11th century scholar in Hadith, Bukhari. Bukhari is the most authentic Hadith collection. Karima was so, as a lady in the 11th century, to get an ijazah, to get a license to teach Bukhari Sharif from Karima was like getting a PhD from Oxford or Cambridge today. That's how historians look at it. And so one of the great imams that graduated on the hands of Karima and who got a scholar, who got an ijazah, a license from Karima, was Imam al-Baghdadi, as a matter of fact. A great imam of his time, Imam al-Baghdadi. So for me, in order to promote that aspect, I named one scholarship after her to attract women, Muslims or otherwise, to do research in these issues. So now we are beginning to find more women being involved in community activities, which is good for us because they are more compassionate and softer, right? And so they are able to give us solutions sometimes to complicated problems. But also the youth have been involved. I don't want to take more of your time. The youth are also involved. We're involved with social, economic issues. I can go forever talking about these things. I'm going to stop now and allow you to ask questions here. Thank you very much. I could talk forever, but I know time is catching up. Thank you for listening. I'll answer whatever I have in mind. I'm going to answer in the question session. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We live in New Zealand, and I look at the Muslims in New Zealand are really considered to be inwards looking. And inwards looking, they think very small. They have not realized that they have to be integrated in the community, show the quality of Muslims, and so on and so forth. I just want to ask you this question. In Australia, are Muslims engaged in the political and the economic arena? Because these are very important things, you see. So I just want to share with you the thought of Professor Rashid Ahmed, who is a leading figure in Islamic economics, who has said after 9/11 that Muslims are good in ritual, but Muslims are poor as a way of life, translating Islam as a way of life. So part of the engagement of the Muslims in a society like New Zealand or Australia, they have to be involved in the political and especially the financial arena. And these are very significant because how are you going to show your qualities to the Australians? You have to show them that you are dealing, in terms of good qualities, honesty, no harm, no injuries. All these kind of qualities is a reflection of your faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree with your comments. I think if the question is how to impact on perceptions of Australians regarding Islam and Muslims, we can look at that from a number of ways. Certainly the political and economic, that plays a very important role, and I'm one of those people in Australia, among others, who advocate the participation in politics and economics. However, our research and other research, we have done research to find out the perceptions and attitudes of Australians towards Islam and the Muslims. And we found one, that most of their education that they receive about Islam and the Muslims is from the 6 o'clock news, the TV. But more importantly, we found that most of those Australians who have a positive attitude and perceptions towards Muslims are those who at some stage of their life engaged with a Muslim. So this interaction at the personal level is the most powerful way of creating positive engagement. Now that is, I'm talking about the general community. I agree with you that also Australian Muslims have tended for many, many years to be inward looking. And until 9/11, now they were forced to start, as I said in my discussion, to re-examine some of these issues. And it's going to take some time, but economic participation in terms of individuals and small organizations is there. But I agree with you. I've always said we don't have anyone in Australia, for example, who has a substantial weight in economic participation. We don't have that. But now they've started in Australia to form Muslim business councils. So we have in Queensland the MBN, Muslim Business Network, which has now collected the business view, Muslim businesses, and began to think of what you have suggested. And in fact, they have given a number of presentations in different places to talk about the economic participation of Muslims. It's at an early stage, but also we began to see doctors forming alliances and councils to also promote the fact that Muslims are contributing to society in many other ways. So we have now, for example, the Queensland Muslim Association, Association of Muslim Queensland, whatever. Queensland Medical Muslim Association, where you've got surgeons and doctors and professors in medicine coming together and trying to highlight their own activities. We have women organizations, Islamic Women's Council of Queensland, for example, and there are similar sister organizations throughout Australia. Having said that, the situation remains true that in economic participation they still lag behind. And in political participation they still lag behind. The first Muslim federal member of parliament has just been elected in New South Wales, right, from a Boston background. Hasich, his name, I think. He's the first. And given that Muslims have had a long history in Australia, why is it only now that we have one politician in the parliament? We have 400,000 Muslims. And I've been told that there are at least 3 Jewish representatives in the parliament for a very small Jewish community. Right? So these are some of the issues that imams, not all imams, because and this is not to show disrespect to the imams, but when they have just been trained in the traditional madrasa and have not been exposed to contemporary issues, when they come and give their sermons or lessons or durus, they do not address these issues because they are unable to address these issues. But we are beginning to see a new, very minute, in Australia at least, a new generation of Muslims who are beginning to challenge the old hierarchy and say we have to be involved in these arenas. But in order to be involved in politics and economics, it is not sufficient to have the numbers, but we have to have the skills. And so I always say to the Australian Muslim community, I always say that Australian Muslims do not lack resources and talents, but they lack a clear vision and management of their resources. Where do we want to be in 50 years' time? That is the vision. Not tomorrow or the year after. Where do we want to be in 50 years' time? Right? And if we have a vision that this is where we want to be in 50 years' time, then okay, can we now support this new generation to achieve that vision in 50 years' time? Some people are starting to think like that, and that is why our Islamic Research Center at Griffith University was actually funded initially by the local Muslim community. And that is a shift in paradigm. Because always Muslim communities want to give funding towards what? You know what? When they want to build what? A masjid or a madrasa. So somebody has extra money, he says give it to a masjid. Alhamdulillah, that's good. But what's the point of having all these masajid, all these mosques? So for the first time, in 2006, I called for a meeting in Queensland, the VIPs of the Muslim community. And I presented to them an idea. And the idea was, how can we start an Islamic Research Center